So I actually have a story about this video, and I think it's kind of really interesting. But almost everybody feels left behind by everybody that does not go into the academic game. And when the day that you start, you don't really notice it so much, but about 4 months, 6 months in, you start to realize, like, oh my gosh, everybody is much further along that did not do any academic research than you, or went into the career, did a PhD, or even did a master's, and you're like, what's going on here? And it's kind of a mind-blowing thing, and this feeling never goes away. So what is this funny story? So I have this friend who is, he's one of my best friends, and an amazing person. Um, and when I was doing my PhD, at the tail end of when it was like feeling really not great, and I was really, really struggling with it, sort of mentally, and thinking about what the hell am I actually doing here? And I thought I did everything right? Like I went from an engineering program at one of the top programs in the country in Canada. And then I continued on, got a master's degree in Canada that's actually pretty well respected. And then I went and did a PhD at one of the best business schools in the world. At least, definitely top rank that everybody knows about. And I was like, okay, I'm doing everything right. Like, I'm actually going to set myself up, right? And as I was finishing up, and you go through this moment of just like real despair, and this is like really, really normal for everybody to go through this. Um, my friend pulls up, and he did everything right. He got a great job, an engineering job right at a undergrad, and then he worked for a long time. He did everything kind of right, and then he pulls up with a Corvette at my house, and I just remember the moment I had two. No, no, we had a small kid at the time. It wasn't two. We had a small kid. My wife was just, we just had the baby, and he was just trying to be nice. And it just really was a challenging thing for me to deal with, because here I am. I'm like, I feel like my everything's in shambles. Our house is falling apart, and 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 then I'm like, I just didn't. It just did not sit with me very well, because I thought I was doing the sort of the grind, and I was like, what am I doing here? Why did I do this? And it was, I was super proud. I'm so proud of the fact that he has this. I'm not, but I felt so out of place, and I felt like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? This is such a silly thing. And from day one, that feeling of I am so far behind everybody else, and nobody understands the industry world does not understand what's going on. That feeling is always there, and you're always feeling like detached from reality. And I think this was intentionally designed this way. I'm actually really, really convinced of this. Every time that you see, and there's kind of a couple of things. So first of all, it is highly discouraged, even though I study businesses, it's highly discouraged in the profession to work with businesses in a much more integrated way. And why is it highly discouraged? It's just hard to do. That they're doing things at a different pace, and they're doing things in a different style, and we have to be very slow, and a lot of people in industry don't understand that. And so there's this like real incongruence that happens unless you find a group that understands that, but there's just like few and far between. Like, I want you to think about, in any given field, it's few and far between. That's why you don't see a lot of companies doing this. The pharmaceutical industry is a little better. Biotech is a little better, where they embrace some of the ideals of academia, but there's very few industries that sort of embrace this nature. So there's that. And then the other thing is that there are programs that pop up that try to encourage a sort of tighter bond. Governments love to do this kind of stuff, right? Like they want this tighter bond between industry and academia, but it's just such an incongruence, and it's so hard to actually do that. And folks in industry, unless you've done it, like it just, they don't understand. Unless you've gone through it, you just don't understand the struggles and what you have to do. And so they get frustrated. The people in academia get frustrated, and it just rarely works in the way that it's actually intended. So there's this like huge incongruence, and it's like it's just because they're working at different time scales, not in the sense that they're being lazy. In fact, you're working like ridiculous amounts all the time. It's just that it takes a long time. It's very hard to do. And you don't typically don't have a big team behind you unless you have a big lab. So you always feel left behind. You always feel like, what am I doing here? What a waste of my time. And you feel like you're far behind everybody else. It's particularly striking in my field because it's business, and there's this huge wage gap typically between business and industry, like, I don't know, 10 to 25%. And so you're looking at it, you're always looking at like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? I feel like, a complete nincompoop, right? Like I feel so silly. So what do? Right? Given this is going on, practice, and I know that this sounds really silly and you're probably going to discount this. Practice just giving a smile and nod to the insanity of it all, right? Like if you think about it, practice like thinking that, hey, this is just my life and this is what it is. This is me living a distinct life. Now, I know that this is going to it kind of creates silos with you. So I've practiced this, and I've talked about this a lot, is that you have to just focus on yourself and not focus on other people. And that is very, very true. And so it creates this kind of isolating silo nature that happens, but you have to pull back and say, hey, I am doing good inside. And if I just compare against myself, I think that that is completely fine. I try to turn off a lot of, like, social media is terrible for this, right? Because it seems like folks in the industry are constantly moving and getting promotions and you're like stagnant. So what I want you to think about is, how can I improve myself and focus on me? Because that's the only thing that really, truly, that you can impact. The rest of the world you can't impact. So focusing on more of that inwardness. If you go through these experiences, which you'll go through, where somebody is doing well in academia, you give them a smile and nod, and you just think, this is my life. There is this movie that I love. It's called Marley and Me. I don't know if you've seen it, but there is this, like, it shows this tension quite well, where the main actor is doing like kind of journalism, family life kind of stuff, and then his friend goes off and becomes this highfalutin video newspaper journalist and works for the New York Times. This is like highly successful. And then you see this incongruence. And at the end, you kind of get the sense of somebody just coming to terms with who they are and what they've done, and that they are internally successful. And I want you to work on that, where you are thinking like you are doing everything that you should be. Everything is actually quite well. And you give a smile and nod to those that are doing well, and let go. I know it's hard. It still hurts today, right? Like all of that stuff, it doesn't go away. It's 20 years later for me. But you give a smile and nod, you smile, you appreciate that the fact that you are living and looking around, and you just keep going, right? Like you have lived the life that lots of people want to live, and you're not realizing it. That's the thing that's really interesting, is that a ton of people want to be able to do this. When you get to do it, you realize it's really hard, and not a lot of people can. But at the same time, I think it's idealized by a lot of people. And I want you to remember that it's a privileged position. You're extremely fortunate to do some of the things that you're doing. And if you're in a bad situation, you can change it. You can turn off the people that are like quit. Like that's a legitimate thing. I don't want you to think that you're ever stuck. You can quit, you can move on to something else, you could do all sorts of wonderful things. And I want you to really focus on that, hey, I'm in charge here inside, and I can turn this around, and I can either focus on all of this stuff that's going on outside of me, or I can focus on making this stable as much as possible. And so finding things that make you stable, right? For me, walking, getting exercise, making sure I try to keep busy as much as I possibly can. And this is an important thing that you will have to deal with and face, is building this strength inside where you are happy and healthy inside, and appreciative of other people that are doing great things that are around you, which tends to be very hard. But learning these skills, learning how to smile through things, is an important part of dealing with all of the tension that you're going to feel. And this is not unlike that you're going to experience anywhere else, where other people are doing things that are different than you and doing seemingly well, but you're not understanding the struggles that they go through and all of the trade-offs that they go through and all of the things that they're going through. Everybody else is looking at everybody else and saying, hey, you have it really much more easier than I do. And then you realize, like, oh my gosh, everybody is struggling and paddling along as fast as they can underneath, right? We're all ducks on the water. And I love that saying, that, we see this calmness on top and everybody is just paddling as quick as they possibly can underneath. All right, take care and have a wonderful day. Good luck. Bye.